episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Everett Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we are here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to the Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. If you have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that when you're getting on the show, you're well organized. You take as little time as you can so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourself and then respect others, because we'll not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. And then we always encourage you to be very forceful but respectful with your point. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. The heavyweights are in tonight. Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
And pleasant good evening to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio, to my colleagues around the table. Good evening to you. To all my friends in the international circle, especially my brethren, Mr. Liebert, there in Connecticut. Special good evening to you guys. We're happy to be here once again, discussing the issues that are affecting the people. It's always my pleasure to come here. It's always my pleasure also to interact with people about this program, as it becomes one of the premier programs, I suppose, in the Federation. I'm very happy to be a part of it. Webo, it looks like security has been stepped up a little bit. I understand that a member of the royal family is visiting the Federation. That is interesting to know that they still hold such authority, such relevance in our life. Webo, I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to a healthy discussion this evening.
Ted Hobson, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. As usual, Webo, I'm always honored to be part of this program on a Tuesday evening. I try to make it when I can, because Mr. Stanley always say I regard it as a commitment that I made many years ago. Webo, I am interested in having a lively discussion tonight, and I hope that people would be listening, and I hope that we will get questions on topical issues, and that we could shed some information and some clarity on all those issues that are out there. Good night, Webo.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the gracious people of Nevis and those people of our Federation, St. those who are listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin. And as Ted mentioned, it is our forte, of course, to ensure that this program continues and to ensure that we disseminate information at its highest level, and we must always try to get it right to guide our people and nation upward and onward. Because I would say this, it is the best place on earth to be, and we must offer our prayers to our Lord for having such a nice day and to keep our country going forward and for our people to live in peace, happiness, and prosperity. Nevis and St. Kitts, in my view, as a nation, in a place, it's the best place on earth for us to live. It offers a great living. Once we're not lazy and we go forward, we produce for ourselves, we would always enjoy the quality of life that has been afforded us by our forefathers, who have been hard-working. They have demonstrated over the years, and they taught us what to do. And I must say, God bless St. Kitts and Nevis. Good evening, Webo. I have a few things to put on the table this evening.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues around the table. Let me say an extra special good evening to our listeners and viewers here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and certainly further afield. I want to say good evening to our guests who are temporary residents in our various hospitals throughout St. Kitts and Nevis, and those who are seeking medical attention overseas. I hope that they can be up and about pretty quickly based on the help and the assistance given by the doctors and the nurses, and certainly by divine intervention. I want to offer Webo my condolences to all those families who are in mourning tonight. I think we have a number of families who are in mourning, and I want to offer to them my profound condolences on behalf of my family and I. Webo, to those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, I certainly want to wish them a wonderful evening, and I hope that they can have some enjoyment, reflecting on the accomplishment as they move forward. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here once again, Webo, and I certainly want to thank you for the invitation, and I'm certainly looking forward to the discussion tonight.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, Edric W. Stanley, Ted Hobson, Conrad Naya Liebert. They're in. This is Thought That Get Results. Edric, let's go straight to you.
Well, I drove into Brownhill today, and I recognized the expansion of that road, and I've mentioned it in the past. But this is a clarion call to our fellow Brownhillians, those who lived there, those who went to school there, and it looks as if we are at the final stretch, right at the main road, Island Main Road, to give it the final thrust to ensure that that village and that community has a type of road that we all enjoy in Nevis. Quite a number of road developments that have taken place over the few years, and I would say this: Nevis has been completely transformed. And I must say hello to my classmate, Henry Stukumba Brown. I just looked at your area where you grew up, and man, they put a nice wall around your area there. And therefore, I mean, I'm certain that you have visited, because you are a lawyer in our country, St. Kitts and Nevis, of course. You reside in St. Kitts, but I'm certain you've been back to Brownhill to see your humble beginnings. It is so heartwarming to see that road and to see the fine work the civil engineers and all the hands that have been brought on deck to bring it thus far. Of course, I see major expansions in Nevis, and I must make reference to the one that is happening right at the entrance to the famous Sunshine, and also the one that is up and coming at the east of the School of the Americas, University of the Americas. And also I understood that there's another hotel that is coming. So those who are out there propelling doom and gloom, you should have been alive 50, 60, 70 years ago to see what Nevis was then and to see what it is now. And I would say that this year is going to be quite good for Nevis, economic development, employment, and ultimately the change that a few of us would have in our pockets. So let us keep our head to the grindstone, and let us continue to propel our nation, country, and people forward through hard work. It doesn't kill, it helps. And it's quite rewarding when you know that you have been a participant in this process. Nevis and St. Kitts, we are up and up, onward going. God bless again this great nation of ours. I would like to put on the table again this evening the Liat story, and I would come from a different angle. One fellow who had been quite passionate with reference to his view of Liat. Liat is an institution of the Leeward Islands and beyond. within our region. And when I look at the news and heard what has happened with those 2 Boeing jets, it tells us that we in the Caribbean, more particularly the Eastern Caribbean, have had relatively good service from LIAT. The horizontal stabilizers have really done Boeing some bad news and ultimately a big hit of its stock with reference to those 2 accidents. And sometimes I go back and wonder, why don't we use certain things that might have happened with reference to the airline in particular? Because I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, Northwest had a problem with the vertical stabilizer, and that, of course, caused one of its aircrafts to plunge, and we had many fatalities. This with Boeing is just the next section of the tail with regard to the horizontal stabilizer. And in that regard, learning from past aircraft accidents, these areas should be revisited, in my view. Revisited by the mechanics and those who actually do repairs on these aircrafts, because the manufacturer designs the aircraft to fly, and it will fly, and that aircraft will tell you if it's going to fly. But you need to look at critical areas that would wreak havoc on these aircrafts once they are airborne. Now, with LIAT, like I said, we have had great safety record, and I could tell you, if I were asked to do a valuation on LIAT, which many people may not be able to understand the areas through which and by which the numbers are garnered. LIAT, of course, based on the name brand, is a multi-billion-dollar operation. And sometimes you may not be able to quantify the amounts, but the numbers are there in terms of longevity and the services that is provided for our region. And in this regard, the brand must carry a hefty valuation to the record with reference to safety. 3, the economic value that he has provided for individuals, businesses, as the case might be. And in those 3 areas, you can begin to quantify the value of LIAT, not even taking into consideration, or let me put it the other way, the aircrafts, the equipment must be valued. And therefore, when one says that we are losing money with LIAT, there is a price that is out there that is invisible with reference to the real value of LIAT, goodwill. And those who are unfamiliar with the process would not see these values, and consequently, they would come up with the negative aspect that LIAT has been costing us a bundle of money. But that's not the case in the true sense of the word. The value is somewhat hidden. A lot of its value is hidden. So I would say, if I'm asked to do a valuation of LIAT, which I would be proud to do, free of cost. Well, I would leave it there. I have a few other things to put on the table.
You keep going.
Now, when I mentioned about the opinion of people who must be kept in abeyance, if that opinion, of course, would run amok, Boris Johnson came up with this idea of Brexit. And when I heard of it, and I said, what are these people attempting to do? And they can't figure it out. Up to now, they cannot figure it out. But Boris Johnson, having an opinion, decided that he's going to propel that opinion forward. And David Cameron, of course, being the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, Had to go along with it. He went along with it. But at this particular juncture, they have not been able to figure it out. And as a consequence, Britain is facing a hurdle, which they do not know how to get under it, over it, around it, or through it. I can't tell you where they're going to wind up. But from the mic of Von Radio, I said it. It was ludicrous. It was a blunder that they made, and it's coming to fruition. Webo, I'll leave it there.
Anyone, you
Webo,
know, yes.
I would just like to make a comment, really, Webo. In driving here this evening with my friend, the Honorable Minister Brand, I raised the contribution that Stanley makes every Tuesday evening on this program. And I said to the minister that I greatly admire his contribution week after week. He comes to this program and he's always highlighting the need for hard work, which I myself support, because as he rightly said, you can't get anywhere without hard work. And also, Webo, he always have a very optimistic view of this federation, and particularly of Nevis. And I think that when I go back over the years and remember what Nevis was like, he's on very solid ground, Webo. And so I want to salute him, because he has stuck with his approach through thick and thin, and no matter what anybody says, he has maintained his position. He speaks of hard work, and if young people would listen to him, I think they will get a lot from his contribution. Well, but insofar as Liat is concerned, I'm a very strong supporter of Liat. Liat has had a wonderful accident-free service to the Eastern Caribbean and beyond for over 60 years. And yet, it is not fully supported by the Caribbean governments. To date, as we know, only 4 governments support members of the Liat company. That is Dominica, Antigua, Barbados, and which is the other one?
Antigua, Dominica,
Barbados.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I think.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And yet, Liat served all these territories over the years. And I, myself, am calling on the government of St. Kitts and Nevis to make have a serious investigation of how they could help Liat out of this predicament they're in. And also, I understand from the government of St. Lucia they're not prepared to help. But that's their call. But I think that I regard Liat as a service that has to be supported. I regard Liat almost as regard the Caribbean and the West Indies cricket team and the University of the West Indies. Liat is an essential service and must be supported. Insofar as Brexit is concerned, well, I speak as somebody who has spent many years in England. I went to England when I was very young. And first of all, I spent 7 years before I became a lawyer, and then I went back 5 years later as the Deputy High Commissioner for the Eastern Caribbean governments, and I spent another 5 years there. And so I regard England almost as my second home. And it's sad to see the predicament that they have placed themselves in. Unlike Stanley, I am not blaming Boris Johnson, because they have Eurosceptics long before Boris Johnson. For years, Britain has felt that they were a great nation and they shouldn't be mixing with these smaller European countries. And they have never really thrown in their lot fully with the rest of Europe. And there were always people in the parliament, particularly the Conservative, who were itching to get out of the European community, even though they benefit so much from it. They feel they're strong enough to go it alone, just like the United States or any other, or Russia or so forth. They fought the war almost single-handedly for a while, and so they feel if they can do that, they can stand in their own. But times have changed, Webo. And it's pathetic to see how session after session in Parliament, they can't come to a decision. It is amazing that a Prime Minister will bring proposals to the Parliament, get voted down, and not only by a few votes, by a massive number of votes, and still remain Prime Minister. This is the strangest, strangest development that I've seen in any democratic country. No other country in the world would you see a Prime Minister bringing time after time proposal to the Parliament, voted out, and she's Prime Minister. Today, Webo, the Speaker made it absolutely clear that the Prime Minister cannot bring those proposals, any similar proposal to the Parliament again. Time out. They must come with something new or don't come at all. So we'll see how it works out. But it's sad to see a great nation like the United Kingdom in this kind of predicament.
Yes,
Well,
Naya.
I would join with Stanley in congratulating the government, the island administration, with the road project. I find that it's quite comforting driving on these new roads. Most people will know that I drive a 1967 Willys Jeep sometimes, and it's the new roads really make it sound new.
More comfortable.
More comfortable. Yes, and yes, I'm enjoying, but sometimes I feel like they're going too slow. I'm going to be honest, and the public share my opinion to a great extent. You know, some of the public, I say some of the public, I mean some of the members of the public. Sometimes I feel like it's going too slow. Stanley was inviting people here from since Culturama. Was it this year? Was it last year or the one before? But we are now realizing the conclusion. I understand. I wasn't there in Brownhill. I have to visit because there's some things there I would like to pick up. But we are at the conclusion of that project. I was made to understand, and I'm sure that it would be an absolute fine piece of fine stretch of road when it's finished, and really doing a lot for the Brownhill community, elevating their standards there and the environment, surroundings, everything. I think that was overdue for a very, very long time. Throughout my lifetime, I can't remember Brownhill had any good roads at all. So that's a great thing. I want to congratulate the island administration on looking at important roads like Craddock Road that has been neglected for some reason, but it's the original road. It's a village road, and I can't see why it was left to deteriorate to that extent. Here in Bard Village, again, roads projects very good, and I must congratulate the government over and over again on achieving and realizing the importance of fixing these inner roads. I would agree with Mr. Hobson in saying that Mr. Stanley is an optimist. I like that about Mr. Stanley. I myself sometimes would like to speak that optimistic about my island. And I wish all of us can, because I suppose that optimism is what carries things through. That is what brings confidence to people who want to invest, people who want to stick around and make the best of our circumstance here in Nevis. Somehow, though, I don't get that optimism from the public. I just had a conversation. I just returned from St. Kitts. I had a conversation on the boat with a gentleman who we know very well, and he's quite mature, and he's a player. He's a player here on Island in terms of economics, and he's of relevance, put it that way. And so when I hear Mr. Stanley talk with such optimism, I wish I can hear that from everybody, on the street. But again, I suppose that I'm asking too much to hear it from everyone, but I hear it a lot that, and I gather the opinion that the Navisians are politically frustrated. Maybe not politically frustrated with the island administration, or maybe with the relationship. I gather that Navisians are asking for more. I gather that Navisians are looking at Nevis relative to St. Kitts and saying that we're not doing much, nothing much is happening over here. As I walked the street in St. Kitts today, I came across a few Navisians who have taken up employment down there, which is okay, it's one federation. But what I do not want to do is to falsify the situation at all. It's important that we call a spare a spare. And sometimes we always go back to the 1920 and look at Nevis from back then. I wasn't alive, so I cannot make that comparison. but what I'm saying, we must look at Nevis today in the present state and relative to the other islands that surround us, and somehow share, you know, the share the variables as, you know, similar variables in a population size and growth and things like that. Because sometimes, yes, we know that we will and we should, and that's what human beings are for, continually improving their surroundings, improving their life, adding more worth to their existence. So sometimes going back too far, it doesn't give me that assurance. What it makes me feel like is like, okay, we see a change and the change is sufficient. But I think sometimes we settle for too much mediocrity here in Nevis. And I'm asking the public to ask for more, even though we have improved from 1930 and improved from 1970, and hopefully we're improving still. I am asking the public to ask for more. I am asking the public to look at the islands relatively, especially our sister island, that island of Katipal in a major way. And yes, I would like to see that kind of energy exuberating here in Nevis. That'll be a very good thing. So whereas Stanley is very optimistic, I hold some reservation, and I'm asking for more. I am not speaking doom here for Nevis, and I am not a pessimist at all. But let us not get too comfortable with what we are dealing with here, because just the other week we had a big talk about the inefficiency of the hospital, and we can go, you know, and we can speak of a lot. So let's not get too comfortable with what I consider to be a mediocre situation in no aspect of life, not just economic development, but even what we do as a people, and, you know, in our arts, in our everyday involvement, and dealing with the aspects of life, because that is very important. Because sometimes we are small, and we can think small and look at the small things, but we must also stretch our mind and imagine greater things for Nevis, greater things for Nevis people. You know, I'm somewhat thinking that we are expecting things to happen. Honestly, we have seen the airport being leased out, so there's a hope in me that we have a lot more things happening there. I understand there's a new international bank somewhere here in Nevis. So it looks like something could be happening. It looks like there could be people with some kind of money coming around. The public probably doesn't know much about this. But I am sensing that something is about to happen, or maybe it's in me that I'm hoping that something will happen. But yes, there's room for a lot of improvement, and let's hope it all unfolds this year. It will be such a great thing. It will be, because believe it or not, Nevis is one of the more beautiful places in the world. I've moved around a bit, and as I said to the individual I was talking to today, that I've left Nevis for good about 5 times. And
you?
Yes,
5 times.
about 5 times I have left Nevis for good, but I've come back.
Yeah.
I've come back,
5 times.
and all the time, and sometimes I feel like going again.
Okay, Naya, let me just take this minute from you and get back. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to your panel.
Good evening.
Webbo, I tuned in and I hear a lot of talk about Stanley and his very positive outlook on what just on life and everything. And I'm minded, and I'm very curious. Good evening to Mr. Stanley.
Good evening,
Because I'm
lady.
wondering, did Mr. Stanley do something again this week that a lot of us didn't know about? I heard very recently that Mr. Stanley had a different career that I, for one, did not know about. And so, Mr. Stanley, if you can share with us, and I'm going to say to you, this is a lighter moment, but I was very, very excited to hear that you were a jockey in another life. Is that true?
I rode for your father.
You did?
Oh, yes.
So share with me, Mr. Stanley, because I'm hoping that you could help us bring and breathe some new life back into horse racing in Nevis, now that I found out you were a jockey.
Well, I've always been asked to own a horse, but the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys.
Lovely.
And in that regard, although I would like to share my experiences with the current people in the horse racing industry, I would never own a horse. The reason is that there's no need to buy an elephant if you can't afford to feed it.
That's so true.
And in this regard, I would say to those who are in the industry to continue to plow ahead, because the island is growing and quite a number of tourists enjoy horse racing. And in that regard, if we're able to keep it where it is and to add to it, it will get better and better. So at some point in time, we would meet and communicate, but Daddy's still around, your daddy's still around. But he has been one of the pioneers in the horse racing industry. And therefore, he has far more to teach you and to teach all of us, because he has not let up. And I'm almost certain that you still have horses in King Garden. So, like I said, I'm happy to share with you the little experiences or few experiences I've had in the industry. But it was really a passion of my pastime. But I've moved on. But still have the knowledge and remembrance, as the case might be, of my time as a jockey and around your dad and other horse owners.
Well, Mr. Stanley, I would like to say to you, you and I have a lot to talk about, because I have some catching up to do. I would like to join with Mr. Hobson in saying that, yes, you do breathe a lot of positivity and excitement into not only this talk show, but I would imagine just about everything that you do. And I would like to encourage you to continue. It's always good to listen. I'm not a fan of Liat, but I listened to you this evening, and you almost won me over and made me start to like Liat. So positive words and positive attitudes breeds positivity all around us. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. And Weber, you got a jockey in your midst.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember on the Liat story, I remember, like I said, I left here in 1966, the 6th of January. And the round-trip ticket at that time cost me $118. And I had $119 on the bank, and I took it and left $1 on the book and bought that round-trip ticket. I do not know what the ticket costs now, but I would say that Liat is still a valuable airline, and there are hidden values, and only one who knows the process would be able to extricate those hidden values, because it's a name brand.
Well, Mr. Stanley, I'm going to ask you one question, and then I won't tie up the lines anymore. I'm curious, though. Can you help us understand why the cost of traveling regionally is so expensive, to the point that in some cases it might be even cheaper to go north as opposed to going down into the region? It's just so very expensive. Perhaps you can help them and help the rest of us in the region manage travel and breathe some life and eject some more, how can I say it, usage into Liat and even another airline coming, because what Liat needs in the Caribbean, I believe very strongly, is competition. Over the years, their service has been poor, absolutely poor. And I am to hope that we get another airline, not necessarily to run Liat out of business, but to make it more competitive, that we can manage it, and the rest of us can manage to travel more, but also make it more enjoyable. So I listen off here. Thank you.
Well, for a brief comment I'll make is that you have to look at it in terms of economies of scale. And Liat operates within our region. You look at other airlines operating throughout the continental United States, Canada, Europe. They've got a much larger pool of the traveling public. And as a result, they can spread the cost over far more people than Liat can. But when you try to make a complete comparison, again, it's apples and oranges. Liat is a name brand. It's just like education. How much value do you put on education? I did a evaluation on that building there with the Department of Education, and somebody poo-pooed the idea, oh, it was overvalued, not understanding that it's an institution that is teaching many of our people how to get their degrees, as the case might be. Those are hidden values, but you have to understand the process as to how to extricate these hidden values. And therefore, Liat is a billion-dollar airline.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. Could you go ahead?
The problem of Liat, I think, is its headquarters. It is based in a place that it is not run as a business, but as a political patronage for whatever party is in power. And unless and until Liat is taken over from the government in Antigua that runs it, like an extension of a political party. I mean, at one time, I don't know what their employment in Antigua is, but at one time, I remember in the 90s when their problems just started, they had 800 employees in Antigua alone. Liat don't need 800 employees in the whole of the Caribbean. The political parties in Antigua, when they have workers, they say, go to the airport and work at Liat. And if Liat is to stay in Antigua, it must not be controlled and run by government. If it is going to be controlled and run by government in Antigua, then the headquarters for Liat needs to be moved from Antigua, because it is not run as a business. It is run as political patronage in Antigua. And that is why the Antigua government is so adamant that it stays there, because they know why they have it like that. And that is why the other Caribbean governments refuse to put any money in Liat, because they know the problem. And until the other governments of the Caribbean get a backbone and say, no, at least they've been sticking out, they only have 4. When they used to have all the other governments, they only have 4. Now supporting them financially. And I think the St. Kitts Nevis government and all the other governments should stick out. Either the headquarters for Liat is moved from Antigua, or if it stays in Antigua, it is not controlled and run by any government in Antigua. Thank you.
Caller, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I realize you put a lot of emphasis on Antigua and tie it with politics. Correct?
Yes.
And then you suggest perhaps you should move from Antigua and go
No,
to...
the airline should be moved from Antigua.
Right. And go to a different island, I assume?
Yes.
Will it be tied to politics in the other island?
No. It has to be
How-
on the condition.
Right. How will you get that divorce from it?
Well, I remember a couple of years ago when they were planning to move it, it was going to be moved to Barbados on those conditions.
So
But it
minus
was-
minus the government.
Minus the government. The
Well,
airline
well, let me ask you this:
Mhm.
could it then stay in Antigua and minus the government?
Well, that is what is going to have to happen. It's either it stays in Antigua minus government control and interference, or it moves out of Antigua minus government
so it
control
is-
and interference.
So it is fair to deduce from what you've said that the essence is to divorce the government from it.
Yes.
Okay.
It should be run as a business without the kind of interference and control that is done by Antigua government. It should be run as a business, and there are people in the Caribbean who can run it as a business without political interference, and the governments of CARICOM, in the Eastern Caribbean at least, need to get some backbone and say either we run it as a proper business without government interference. They could have some kind of government oversight.
Government
without
oversight.
Government interference, where they're running it like every day, like a government department. But that is the problem of LIAT.
Okay.
It's not run as a proper business. It's run as a patronage for political parties.
And one of your options is that the government could continue to run it, but run it as a business.
Well, the thing about it is owned by the government.
Yeah, but
they
yeah,
must
I
have
got
some-
I got that. I'm just trying to get you. One of your options is that the government could keep it, but just run it as a business.
Run it as a proper business.
I
And
got
I'm sure
you.
they're capable of doing it. But not with the kind of running they run it with in Antigua. You don't need, LIAT don't need 800. I don't know how many employees they have now in Antigua.
Okay.
But at one time they had over 800 people.
Okay. All right. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
However, I don't know where that caller gets her information from. LIAT is a company, and the country that has the most shares in LIAT shareholder is Barbados, and the managing director of the company LIAT is not from Antigua. So I don't know. I'm sure that the government of Antigua are happy that LIAT is headquarters in Antigua. But I am not convinced that the company is run by the Antigua government. I'm not because none of the other governments, whether it's Barbados or St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in fact, Ralph Gonzalez has a lot to say about LIAT. And I don't see Ralph Gonzalez allowing the Prime Minister of Antigua running LIAT. The fact remains is that LIAT is a short-haul airline, and you're going to have a lot of what do you call it, maintenance, wear and tear, and all of that sort of thing. That's why I say LIAT is a company that is a service to the Caribbean. It is not going to make any load of money, you know. So we have to subsidize LIAT. Why should the government of St. Kitts and Nevis benefit from LIAT and doesn't make a contribution? I've never been able to get an answer for that. And so, whether it's in Antigua or in Barbados, are the unions in a union leader in Barbados is calling for the movement of the headquarters to Barbados, because they said no money is to be made in these smaller islands down here. The money is to be made between Barbados and Trinidad and Guyana and so forth, and Grenada and so forth. So what is Liat to do? You know, I mean, everybody has their suggestions and so forth. But I think you have to come, when you come on the radio, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to know, you have to have your information and not bringing in suggestions that give the impression that everything is politics. I'm sure everything is, a lot of things in the Caribbean is governed by politics. But my understanding is that the management of Liat has been praised for its decisions and so forth over the last year or so. And what it needs is money. What it needs is money to run it. And, you know, some years ago, Stanford, the billionaire, decided to compete with Liat. And even before he was hauled away to the United States, to jail in the United States, he had to give up because he couldn't compete, although he had all the money pumping into it. So the call for competition is a useless call, because nobody is going to come into these islands with any airline and going to be able to run it efficiently. You know, about all of these airlines that we have coming to Nevis, we have to subsidize them, and we don't subsidize yet. Those airlines that come in here, we have to make sure.
But the truth is, don't we, Ted? Because even right now, I think since we were here last, we had a news item right here in Vaughan, which said that a few of the Caribbean governments have now come to the rescue of Liat and pledged various sums to reach a particular total to keep them flying.
No, they have been allotted a certain amount. Up to now, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has not yet.
No, but some of them have come up with the 6 point or whatever is needed.
None of them have come up with it yet. They're all talking about.
They're pledged. Some of them are pledged.
So what does that mean? But that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it does. So that's what I'm saying. And they're still flying.
Well, of course.
Because
the development bankers put money into it.
But so this is what I'm saying. So
until the pledges come in.
not just until the pledges come in.
But it's a commitment. It's a
because
commitment.
the Prime Minister of Grenada said they're making a contribution, but they are working out how much they could make. St. Kitts and Nevis has not.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Ted, the specific thing that I'm speaking about gave the amounts.
Yeah.
This country gave, let's say, 330,000. This amount, and it came to that total. The point that I'm making is, and this is not the first time that they have done that. It is the MO, the modus operandi of Liat. So I was just responding to you, Ted, to when you said what it needs is money, but it normally gets money. And that's where it ends up. Anyway, the thing on that point, I just wanted to point out, on the point with Liat. And I found something intriguing, because remember when we were here last, we pointed out that they did a study, and they pointed out 3 things which were wrong. And then that news item came about they're fixing the issue with the monies. And they said nothing about the poor output. So what invariably might happen again is that they might pour in the tons of what, Edric?
600?
The tons of money.
Yeah, yes, okay.
And then ignore the other problems. And then when that money is finished, we still have the problem. Because we don't, although we know what the problems are in many cases, we pretend that we don't know, and we apply another prescription. Those are facts. So they did the study, and they found out that the part of the problem, a major part of the problem, is low or poor productivity.
But that is tied really to the human element. And the caller who suggested that they have 800 employees in Antigua, it means that those 800 employees are not operating at the optimum capacity, and consequently, it's a strain and drain on the airline's resources.
But what I'm saying, Edric,
But it's
so we
based on
keep
the study.
saying it,
But
but you're doing nothing
Based
about
on the
it.
study, yeah, well,
But you still expect the problem to be fixed, right?
that's human nature.
So then what? I asked the question last week, so I'm going to ask it again finally. So what are we complaining about? Mr. Brand, you wanted to get it.
Yes, well, my colleagues would have put a number of topics on the table, and of course, the one that is front and center is, of course, LEAT. I have always hold of view, Webo, that LEAT have been an institution throughout the Caribbean. Mr. Stanley sought to put a dollar figure to it. I'm not certain if we can really put a dollar figure on the value of LEAT. When we think about the kind of movement that LEAT does for the Caribbean, it's virtually priceless, really. You name it. All kind of activities that take place the length and breadth of the Caribbean, and LEAT is front and center of it. So that part of it is absolutely priceless. Spoke about hard work. My colleague Naya would have spoken about the roads and airport and offshore bank and so on and so forth. Well, but I sit in a very unique position from my colleagues. I find myself at a place where most of these issues that were placed on the table, front and center of them. But one of our goals and objectives this year, Webo, is to try and do whatever we can do to try and stimulate the economy. I believe Naya from time to time would have, and all of us would have said from time to time that things in Nevis might be a little bit slow or not as vibrant as we would like to see.
I don't see it, I don't
Yeah,
see
but
I am a vibrant.
it's
I
a
see vibrancy.
it's something that some people, based on their opinion, they feel so and they think so, and for one reason or the other, rightly or wrongly. But our goal and our objective this year is to try and do a lot more to try and stimulate more activity in the economy. The matter of the airport agreement is to try and do just that. Try and make sure that we add some additional buoyancy in the economy to try and expand our tourism base, our tourism market, and all of that. The matter of the offshore bank is also to attract new businesses to Nevis. So there is a serious thrust to try and broaden the investment level on the island of Nevis, thus trying to create additional employment and so on for our people. Because wherever one person is unemployed, we as a government is doing our very best to try and see how we can get that individual employed. I think Naya spoke about the roads, and I made a note here. He said that sometimes it's often slow. That at times can be the case, because I think that we need to recognize that while we may be at times dealing with concrete and asphalt and so on, there are other trades that have to get involved. We have water at times have to be involved. We have NEVLEC, we have the telecommunication companies and so on and so forth. So at times we have to wait on them for certain things to be in place. So there are times when we are not moving as fast as we would like to move. That is a given. But our aim this year, like I said, Webo, is to try and add some additional buoyancy in the economy and create some additional jobs where we can. And in particular, these two items that we would have put on the table, the airport matter and the offshore bank, all of these are initiatives that we as a government is seeking to do to try and add some additional buoyancy in the economy. So we keep trying, and we will continue to do what we feel could be good initiatives to bring about some activity on the island of Nevis. I would say to you, Webo, that I don't believe that even though that we are the government, we don't necessarily have all the answers. We are prepared to listen. We are prepared to take advice and guidance from persons who would have been there, done that, and have had certain experience and exposure to certain things. And we are prepared to go down certain path that might be beneficial to the island and the people of Nevis.
I'm due for a break, but let me just mention as I go to the break. I know Edric follows the U.S. politics closely, right, Edric?
Quite so. Well.
And the young gentleman who just got in. Beto, yeah,
Beto,
right?
O'Rourke.
So what I found was fascinating. It's just how interesting Trump is. So he got into the race and he gave this speech, and he's at this in Iowa. And so they asked Trump what to think about him. Trump said, I saw him. He got a lot of hand movements, you know, more than anybody I ever seen.
But Trump too.
He has hand movements too.
Yeah, but Trump said, I think you all need to check him out because I think you're crazy.
He's the one that mentally.
So, I mean, you just can't. Trump said, you need to check him out. I said, there's a lot of hand movements. So I think the fella might be crazy. So you already know Trump's name for him. And on a more serious note, what I find is interesting in that, people keep laughing. And remember, Trump did a whole campaign of that already. And as they kept laughing, he ended up in the White House.
Yep.
And I'm watching that a lot, you see, and I always tell people, when I look at these international events, I try to see whether or not how it fits into our own arena. Because sometimes we have campaigns, and people go and they listen to politicians, and all they get is jokes and cursing. And then they end up right in office. And then you start complaining and not doing anything. But they didn't tell you they're going to do anything. They were cussing and you were laughing. So I just found that interesting. We'll be back right after these.
From the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. They have got over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Oh, and remember, they are open all day Saturday to serve you better. Builder's Paradise, located at CAP Southwell Industrial Park, St. Kitts. Call them today at 466-4938.
Back in this episode of Talk That Get Results with Conrad Nye-Libet, Ted Hobson, Edric W. Stanley, the Honorable Spencer Brand. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700.
Well, with regard to the combination or the comparison of this Beto O'Rourke, I could say this: he is one to be watched. But there are a few others in the race. But politics is predicated on money. And seemingly, he already has an avenue through which and by which he's raising a lot of money. Although they are attempting to criticize him regarding the specificity on the issues. But he's not worried about that at this moment. If he's
Trump didn't have any issues, it's just talk.
well, Trump, of course, had money, and Trump, of course, got a lot of talks. Much of it is predicated on half-truths, but he wound up in the White House.
Well, just as you said, on half-truths, I watched a commentator earlier who said that Trump is a liar.
But he lies all the time.
Yeah, but he's serious about it. He's yeah, but anyway.
Webo, a lot to do with whether you're liked or not liked, and that is the issue. There's no point you going into politics if people don't like you. So it does look as if the young people like Beto O'Rourke, and we'll see. I mean, he excites them. Whether it's because of his hand movement or because he's young, I think he reminds them of Obama. And I think that he's attracting a lot of support from the young people. And I too, like Stanley, has my eyes set on him because I think he's attracting a lot of contributions from individuals and so forth, because that is the answer. You have to get money from ordinary people because they're the ones who are going to support you.
It's a combination of a lot of things, and money is one. But remember, Hillary had money.
Yeah, but she wasn't liked.
But right, but and she lost. But the other thing that is interesting is that this guy just ran a race.
Yeah,
they loved him. He had money, and he lost.
Yeah, but Texas had.
But so is the campaign, the country, because remember, in his first few hours, most of what he did, he started apologizing. Well, and one commentator said, it's very early yet, and in this presidential grind,
it's a marathon.
It's a marathon, and how you fend off the stuff that come at you. Because look at Trump. Trump is a con man, but he was getting through until he sat in the president's chair.
Yeah.
So you know when
he doesn't apologize for anything.
No, but he will find out. You see, so it's a.
I mean, everybody's waiting for Biden, but I am one of those people who feel when you reach the age of 78 and so forth, you're not supposed to be, because the burden of running a country is too much, especially the United States. How are you going to run a country?
Yeah, but
I mean, that's what happened to Hillary. Hillary couldn't even keep up, but for some reason or the other, Trump has a lot of energy.
But I was about to tell you that's theory, because before Trump, age was a great factor.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, anybody can go in at any age, but it's not a highlight. Nobody's highlighting that anymore.
No, apparently you can't.
No, it's a plus. The age is a plus.
It's a plus.
It's a plus. I could tell you that. Ronald Reagan, I think, was in there. Maybe
no, he was not. He was old, but he wasn't old like these fellas here.
No, he was older than those fellas.
Yeah, Reagan was old.
Reagan was old.
He was older than these fellas.
Almost 80.
Yeah. Reagan was almost 80.
I think so.
Yes.
I'm telling you, Reagan was up there.
No.
Yes.
Look,
check it out.
Ted,
check it out.
With due respect, you have to yield to
Well,
Edric.
he's going to tell you now. No. I'm telling you.
Right, but you have to yield with Edric. Edric was appointed to something by Ronald Reagan. Am I wrong?
Look and see their thing.
Edric was in his
well, no,
party. You were in the party.
I was in the party,
and you have a picture with him.
Yes, sure. Yes. And
I know all these things.
Yes.
But he said, enough.
But what I'm saying to you is that Reagan was up there in age, older than Trump is now. I could tell you that.
Yes.
69.
69, I'm telling
69,
you.
but he served 2 terms.
Yeah.
He served 2 terms. So
no.
69
and
start 69.
7 and 16, that's 76.
No. When he started?
He was 69 years when he was sworn in as the president.
Right. And he served 2 terms.
Yeah, these are 78.
But you're not suggesting.
But he was re-elected, you know.
Right, but you're not suggesting that he is the benchmark.
No.
So that's what I'm saying. So the fact that he was 69 when he's sworn in, somebody could be 79 when they're sworn in.
Right.
So you see what happens sometimes. A lot of people use certain things and spin it to their advantage.
Yeah.
Lest we forget, Kennedy Simmons was rooted out of office because he was too old. But now, some of those folks who rooted him out, and that basis is older and still running.
Yeah. Yep.
And all of a sudden, that is not a factor. So you got to understand. And a lot of people would campaign and say one thing, and they're going to do the same thing. But they will tell you, it was a strategy. As Edric would say, it was a tactical move.
Dishonesty.
So that is why you find the age factor is not really coming up now, because Biden is older now than the last time when he attempted to run.
Of course.
And when he did the last time, they were saying he's old.
I'll tell you, Trump is going to seek a second term. And as a result, the country is looking at Biden as one who will be able to match Trump in terms of age, experience. Although he has never been in the presidency, Biden has never been in the presidency. Biden has spent so many years in Congress that they would give him a pass with reference to leadership. And therefore, they would make the comparison with reference to Trump, having sat in the president's chair, having governed as a president, and therefore you've got a balance in terms of Biden, his experience in Congress, Trump, his experience as his first term as president, and therefore people would say, let these two horses run.
And of all the persons who on the Democrat side who are challenging Trump, Biden is the closest to Trump in terms of being crazy.
Well,
yeah, because
he have said certain things that
that's Biden will take him on with his almost looseness.
Right. Well, Biden told him that he would take him behind the woodshed. And
Yeah.
You understand? But it is a lot of drama in the United States of America, but more so in Washington. And it is quite fascinating to follow and to also come up with your own prediction and make a determination as to whether or not you are on or off. You understand?
So that I don't read you wrong. What are you at this particular point in time, a Democrat or Republican?
Well, I'm still a Republican, but at the same time, the views are not that far apart, between Republicanism
and Trumpism.
You're just not supporting Trump.
You understand?
I mean,
but I'm not supporting Trump. I will never support Trump.
Okay, but that's more or less what I was getting at. So you're still a Republican registered, but if you were to vote, you would have voted this time Democrat.
Right.
Well, like
President,
the Republican.
I was detecting it.
Josh Bush.
President Bush said the first time he ever voted for a Democrat was in the past election. You understand?
Right.
2016, and he voted for Hillary, which was clear, and it was nice to hear it from the horse's mouth.
But that's why I tried also to get it out of you.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear it from your mouth that you are still a Republican, but this time around, you're going Democrat.
Well, we don't know. I mean, this time around we don't know, because there's some good horses on the Democratic side vying for the party nomination.
At this point, if you were to vote, you would still vote Trump.
Well, no, not Trump. No, Trump is.
But that's what
Trump
I'm saying, Edric.
It's not a leader in the true sense of the word, in terms of
He's a gang leader.
So if you would not,
of the most powerful
Mr.
nation of the world.
Mr. Stanley,
Yes.
if you would not at this juncture vote Trump, then you would vote Democrat.
Well,
Absolutely.
Well, he said, yeah.
well, let's wait and see what happens, because there are people in Trump's party, in the Republican Party, who want to challenge Trump.
They
They would like to, but they wouldn't.
Well, we would.
Because Jeb Bush said in an interview, somebody should,
But not him.
but not him.
Well, I mean, Jeb.
A fellow called Welch has put up himself, though. Yeah. Used to be governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah. Well, Jeb has been
Bruised.
pounded by Trump.
Trump.
And Trump really
Never recovered.
smashed the dynasty.
Yeah, he never
of
recovered. Yeah.
the Bush family, because George H.W. wanted to have his two sons follow in his footsteps, but Jeb just didn't make the grade simply because Trump came up with a strategy, and Trump knocked him out of the race, not only him, but also Ted Cruz, who I think has presidential ambitions and aspirations. And the young fellow Rubio, he is a good man too. And I was looking at those two as real heavy challengers to Trump, but Trump came up with a strategy and knocked both of them out of the race long time. And they never recovered.
Lion Ted.
Well, Ted is in there hanging in to pick up the spoils if Trump drops out. Yep. He is in there, although Trump has said so many things about himself, about Ted and his wife and Cruz's like father.
And yet he's like a tool to Trump.
He's like a lapdog. He's right there trying to, hey, look, if anything slips off your bat, I'm right here. You understand me? I want to pick it up and run with it because they all have presidential aspirations. Well, we'll see what happens come November. But there are a lot of people, there are a few people in the Republican Party who feel that Trump should not be given a second term.
But none
from an
of
international
them,
point of view, he's not a good leader.
But none of them have the courage.
Well, we'll see. We will see. Money talks. And what that means is that when the time comes, if Trump, depending on this extensive investigation that's going on,
Mr. Stanley, 90% of Republicans support Trump.
I understand that, but I'm trying to say this.
You're just 10%.
I'm just saying to you, if it is proven
and they're all afraid
that Putin has been influencing Trump, because ultimately it gets down to influencing the decisions of the United States government. And there are a lot of people in the United States who are in really important positions who disagree with Trump to the extent
of Republicans are just like Trump.
They are trying to save the party, not Trump.
They are not. They're
trying to save the party for themselves.
They are a set of racists, most of them.
Well, we understand, but they're trying to save the party.
I'm telling you.
When Trump defaults, that the party doesn't disintegrate to the point where they know how to pick up the pieces and it becomes a massive effort to put Humpty Dumpty back. So as a result, they're there with the hope that the support would still be carried by Trump, and he's still there for Trump, that if Trump is taken out by this massive investigation that is still ongoing, then the party would still remain having these supporters.
So you don't think that if the massive investigation takes out Trump, it will also take down the party?
No.
Really?
I'm not saying that the party would win, but the party would still be 90% intact.
Wounded?
It would be wounded. Just like
so if you're wounded,
once you lose a race.
So if you're wounded, you'll be 90% intact?
Listen, how do we run our races here? 52% is the CCM party, 54%. 46% is the NRP. That's still a solid core of supporters. All they have to do now is to build that 46 back to the 50% threshold and then some. That's the strategy. But you look at it throughout. Syndicats, the same way. Once you are at the 50% percentile level, you just need to have a little makeup to get beyond the 50%, and therefore you are close to the finish line.
Brand.
Yeah, Weber, I'm listening to Mr. Stanley's analysis, but one of the things that I want to put on the table as well is one thing that has been taking some traction in the last 24 hours is thought about getting rid of the Electoral College in the US. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think even that they are trying to see how they can use to get rid of Mr. Stanley's president.
It is a
Well, you know, I mean, the Democrat for the last 7 elections have had
they have come up with the short end of the stick because of that.
you know, they have won the majority votes. But where would that not going to run? Because you need 3/4 of the state. And the reason why the small states will never support that.
A lot of states are signing up.
You know, is because, for instance, people are, if it was just for votes, people would concentrate with New York and California, and they wouldn't go to all these small states like Iowa and all those places. So they're not going to support that. So it's not going to happen. This is just a waste of talk. I mean, it is true that in most countries, the presidential election is based on one man, one vote, and so forth. But they came up with this idea of the college in order to give the small states some say in choosing the president. And I don't see, they have to change the constitution, and I don't see these small states supporting it. Well, because, look how many people are going to New Hampshire and Iowa and all of those places. If it was just people, they're not going there. And Mississippi and all those, nobody would go to see them. But now they have to take into account that these small states have points, have their own college numbers and so forth, which are going to add up to win an election. So that is why they're not going to be able to get rid of that.
Well, Trump was fortunate and had the support of these small states from the Electoral College point of view, and was able to win the presidency as a result. He lost the popular vote. And
well, so did Bush as well.
But there is a move afoot, and there is some, I would say, merit to it, because it is difficult for you to vote in a man like Trump, who lost the popular vote and became such a terrible president with reference to all the baggage he brought to the presidency, all the negativity that he has brought to the United States, the leadership that he has provided with reference to foreign policy is really atrocious in my view. And in that regard, we have to look for an alternative, and they are looking at the Electoral College that in my view made a colossal mistake when they put Trump in there, when they gave Trump the nod. Trump, of course, wanted to prove that he could win, but didn't want to govern. He didn't like the idea of having to govern. And there are all kinds of things coming up on Trump because of the type of person he is. He is in there for himself. I mean, there are some leaders who might, for whatever reason, set a strategy in place that they are shaded from all these criticisms. No, Trump, I do not know when the hotel started, but Trump has a hotel right across from the White House, so it is said. And in that regard, he's going to benefit from it. I think there's a lawsuit now that is afoot to
because
ensure
all the Arab governments send their people right there.
To ensure that Trump does not benefit while he's in the White House and still has another White House across the street. So when we look at the type of presidency that Trump has brought about, or the leadership to the presidency, it is really terrible. Why? No president of the United States ever had fallen into this kind of negative criticism as Trump has. So the United States voters are looking for a way out. That's why they are now attempting to tinker with the Electoral College, because it is believed that all the minorities, I shouldn't say all, but a majority of the minorities would support the Democratic Party, and therefore they would stand a better chance of unseating Trump, because Trump's supporters remain irremovable. It means solid. And as a result, he says what he says, he does what he does, simply because he felt that his base is not going anywhere. His base is right there with him.
No matter what they say.
No matter. So we have to wait and see. Now, I would have thought Hillary would have come back, but Hillary couldn't come back simply because Bernie is in there. Bernie is the one who denied the election, you know. Bernie Sanders is the one who denied the election.
He started to pounce on her.
Right. Well, he ran
and she couldn't survive. You know.
He ran.
She didn't have the energy to.
He ran her down to the wire. If he had gotten out of the race earlier, she would have brought home the bacon.
You almost seem as if you wanted Hillary to run unopposed.
No. She had other people in the primaries that didn't make it.
But you just wanted out Bernie.
Well, the thing is that those of us who didn't want Trump, including the late President George Bush.
You didn't want Bernie either.
Bernie didn't want Bernie either.
You understand? Wanted Hillary. I'm just saying to you, so many people wanted
Say that
Hillary.
again?
So many people didn't want didn't want Trump, including the late President Bush, but wanted Hillary.
But what happened? More wanted Trump.
No, Trump lost the popular votes.
Edric.
Yes. The Electoral College.
But based on the system,
it doesn't work like that.
We understand that,
Exactly.
Weber. We understand that.
So then don't peddle it.
That's why they're tinkering now with the
trade.
with the hope that they might be able to
You're never going to get that change.
Get that change to the extent.
No, it's akin to when they're doing the same thing here. Every time now somebody gets in office, in power, and they're controlling quote unquote electoral office, they begin to look to see what is more advantageous to them and then change it to suit them. That's foolishness. That's not how we play cricket, Edric. And don't peddle it.
Yeah.
Well, we have to separate, put a firewall between United States and our local politics.
No.
You have to.
No, it's people. Unless you're going to say one said it's people and one said there's no firewall.
Listen,
you always remind me that you have a responsibility. You always say we have a responsibility. So don't peddle that. You're encouraging people to. No,
we got right people in the office now. We have the right people in the office now because you always said you can have the best system in the world, and if you have the wrong people,
still gonna be the best.
So why I'm hearing underground current that they intend to take some people off the list and stuff like that because it will be more advantageous to others. That's just talk then?
Well, I hope it doesn't happen.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't happen.
Well, we'll see. What I'm encouraging people to do, unless there is something fundamentally wrong with the rules and the laws, let's do it like how we play cricket and everything else. Look at the rules, strategize, and go and play a fair game.
Quite so.
Because I talking to a fellow and he is giving me his arguments why they should change up the whole thing, right? And I keep listening and just keep watching him because he tell me he's been around in this thing for a long time, but all of a sudden he just got that views or ideas. So I just listen and I smile.
He wants to win, but he doesn't really want to win by the rules. It's interesting.
Right, Naya?
Well, just a little walk away from that topic because I listened to Mr. Stanley speak of Brexit, and somehow I get the wrong impression. I suppose I get the wrong impression because he always makes me feel like the British public don't know what they're doing. He's talking about Boris
Johnson,
one individual who have a big mouth. But really and truly, was England ever comfortable being a part of the EU?
That's what I said. They've never been
They've
comfortable.
never been comfortable. They never intend to give up the pound.
They have hold on to the
They never give up the sovereignty of their constitution.
Okay, Naya, I'll come right back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening.
Good night. I want to say, Webo, I just go for the Forbo rally.
Go ahead, Naya.
Yeah, Britain never ever was comfortable in the European Union, Webo. I happen to study deep into the European Union, and Britain was never comfortable. They never give up the pound. They never give up the sovereignty of their constitution. I mean, their involvement in Europe was simply an act of parliament, which could have been repealed any time, which I suppose they did. But I never find it totally surprising that there was a referendum and Britain have made its way out of Europe, because, as I said, you know, they were never comfortable. But, Webo, there is an era in history right now where people are very nationalistic. England is a strong country, and the major problem is that they're experiencing now is for them to have a relationship with the European Union that all is happy with.
And that is
But
proven to be a hard
that is a hard job,
That's a hard
because
divorce.
they are not negotiating with themselves.
Right.
They're negotiating with the union, which, of course, want to put some punishment in them too.
Absolutely.
You know?
Lest any other other one wants to do the same, you know.
Yeah, and it's about market share and access to the markets and all kind of things. But that does not, to me, say that Britain and the people of Britain have made this massive mistake. It's a referendum, and you must respect the people's wish. The Prime Minister at the time said, well, we're going to deal with it. There was optimism when it took place. But I think they're going to still work their way out of the circumstance that exists. But it is the politics within British Parliament and within Britain that is causing the real problem. It is the politics. So
Now that's like getting into a car which you know is not roadworthy, getting in an accident, and then say, I was driving good, but it's just that the car was not roadworthy.
No, I wouldn't say that way,
No?
because you know how often things change, and you know how politicians stay, you know.
But that is where Naya experience and a lot of other things come in. And we were just talking about Biden and the different persons and whether they have experience and so on, because sometimes you can miscalculate things by saying, listen, we can do this and so on. And even with Liat, I have said 2-3 weeks ago, this thing needs an honest, healthy debate, because there are a lot of factors that if you rush it, you might go and get a decision and then run into a lot of problems because you ignored certain very important factors. Yeah.
Well, there was an ongoing debate and campaign, Webo. But, you know, I'm not one who is easily moved to the conclusion that the electorate is wrong. The electorate don't know what they're on about. I am not one who will arrive there easily, you know. Doesn't matter what circumstances follow, you know. And that is my input on this Brexit thing. You know, I find Britain, the people of England know what they're doing. They know what they was aspiring towards. The arrangement is difficult to really come together. But I think they want it out, and they're out. And
now you're not of the view that electorate is wrong. Could they be wrongly? Could they have been wrongly advised?
That's a good point.
They could have been told things that are not conducive to the working or the success of the move. But the electorate, I can't say they're wrong, Webo.
No, but I got you. That's why I asked the question. That's why I asked the question. The alternative then. They are not wrong, but could they have been wrongly advised?
They could have been wrongly advised, Webo, but Webo, to me, I mean, come on, we're dealing with the masses. Who are you talking about? I mean, this was a clear-cut victory.
But I'm with you, Naya.
You know?
I am with you. I don't believe that they were wrong, but I just want to know, could they have been wrongly advised?
You know, England is full of intellectuals, and they boast the biggest schools in the world. And debates of such in England usually are good debates, Webo. You know, what I mean, I mean, the media, the houses, and so forth are as such. They dig very deep. I cannot say they're wrong, and even though wrong advice might have been thrown at them, but they're also the balancing factor. I mean, they were right advice too. I mean, we are looking at it from here. And we see that they're finding it difficult to arrive at a deal. But I cannot really, you know, join forces with Stanley and condemn the wish of the electorate.
You know the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin? He went to take the rats out, but he threw all the children with the rats and carried them down the rat hole. You understand?
That's a good one. And you remember all those things, eh?
You understand? So what happened? They figured how to leave one side of the riverbank, but they never figured out how to get to the other side. That's where the problem is.
Or it can also be akin to when a certain fellow who was very bright said that he was led up the gut by a fellow who was not so bright.
Quite true.
And then a fella asked, well, who was really the bright one? You see what I'm saying?
True.
Yeah.
It's quite true. When you do figure it out,
yes.
you realize that you got it dead wrong.
You have it dead wrong.
Dead wrong. So I'm just saying, with all these people in Britain, as I describe them, and don't misunderstand me, I love the British because it has given me a certain persona, image. British, well circumspect. And when it comes to discipline, the British, well disciplined.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for holding.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good night to the panel. I just want to say to you guys that the reason why Britain came out of the European Union is that the Bible predicted it in the book of Daniel. That they will come together, that same amalgamation of nations, but they will not please. So let me explain that to you guys. It's not no human thing. It has been predicted. It has been prophesied by God. Okay? Now, another thing I wanted to say is, you know, it is said that the world is a global village. And within this global village, there is movement of people. People move from region to region. They move from island to island, and so on and so on. And this is nothing new, because we saw that all the way back, you know, during the days where they had the Tower of Babel and the languages of the people were confused. God confused the language of the people, and there was the subsequent dispersion. Now, sometimes when these people come into a region, there are times when they are of different ethnicity, they have different customs, beliefs, they observe certain rites and ceremonies. But we in Nevis, we know of only one God, and that's the God Jehovah. And the God who the Bible tells us, he made the earth and everything therein. And everything therein was made for him, meaning that everything should worship him and him only. Okay? And I want to pull from a speech I heard from an ex-Prime Minister of Australia some years ago, Kevin Rudd, I think his name was, R-U-D-D. And he said, we don't serve him in ignorance. We serve him because we have tested and we have proven him. That's what he said. We have proven his love and his mercy towards us. That's why we serve him.
Amen.
And let me finish. And I want to say that, when people come in and, they want to observe their, ceremonies, rites, and customs and all that, they have a right to do so, as long as they do it within the confines of the law. They have a right to. And I don't seek to be discriminative. I don't seek to be discriminative. But I want to appeal to the people of Nevis to be careful. Be careful what you go out to support. Be careful to understand some of these customs and cultural practices that these people come with, that other people would come with, naturally would come with. And be careful to understand the origins of them, because some of them may not be pleasing to the God we serve, the God Jehovah. And I want to also go on to make another appeal to the people of Nevis. Now, when your children are going out, you go to the drugstore and you buy a bottle of oil, and you get someone, a praying person within your community. I mean, we have so many of them. We have Sister Griffin down there at Finney's Road, Sister Florence Morton, we have the Seventh-day Adventist pastors, we have Pastor Freeman, and more, and other people. I am appealing, I am making an entreaty to the people of Nevis, and get them to pray over that oil and anoint your children. Anoint your children. We see the frequency of death in our country. It's as if we have been struck with a spiritual Ebola. I mean, Nivijans are just dying, and everybody is commenting, everyone is commenting, but we don't understand. So I'm appealing to people with children in the community. Pray over your children, and above all, be careful what you go out to support. Be careful lest we bring wrath upon us, lest we incur the displeasure of the God we serve, we know. And as Kevin Watt said, we have tested and proven upon this nation. Good night. And
don't go yet, caller.
One question.
Caller.
Hello?
Caller, you still there?
He's gone.
It's gone.
Okay. Now you go ahead. What you
No, I just wanted to ask if she's talking about a particular oil from the drugstore.
That is what I was going to ask.
No,
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know that. The simple question. She said to go to the drugstore and get oil. So I don't know what kind of oil.
And I wanted to ask, for her to clarify for me, maybe she can call back, and if she's still following, wanted to clarify for me that she had said that we in Nevis serve one God and Jehovah. So I wanted to clarify, and I wanted her to clarify and amplify it for me.
Interesting.
Well, Jesus, God, Allah is called by so many different names, and they mean the same thing. But
okay, so in other words, then
I'm not speaking for her. I'm just telling you.
What you understand?
Yes.
So, and that's why I'm asking you. Well, let's see if this is the person that's called back. Hello, good evening.
Olive oil, Naya. Olive oil.
Okay.
Olive oil.
Okay.
Okay, and caller, might I ask also that you had said we in Nevis serve one God? Oh well, my God.
Caller again.
Well, I hope she addresses mine as well. Yes, we in Nevis serve one God, and I want that to be confirmed and perhaps amplified so that I can understand. Because Edric, you know that in understanding I'm slow, but I do finally. Well, I went to an office the other day, and it took a little long, and the ladies who were there asked me if I could hold them. I said sure. They said because the computer is just like you.
Oh. That's a very broad term.
I should have told them I'm not so sure.
Well, that's a very broad term, because I think the greatest invention has made is the computer.
I didn't get you. They said the computer is just like me.
Smart like you?
Meanwhile, old?
No, it was taking a lot of time.
No, well, I'm just saying that's a very broad term, and therefore I don't accept the whatever electronic.
So I should have told them, okay, so next time they tell me that, just tell them I don't accept it.
And ask them to explain, because
okay.
A computer, in my view, I mean, when I use a computer, I said to myself, boy, it's the greatest thing there.
No, you're not following me. I said it was taking
a while.
Tell them.
And so just tell them, explain.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I got
it's not applicable to you.
Oh. I know you got my back.
You got your back.
You got my back. I could always count on him. But anyway, that was just a light moment. But you see, sometimes you predict wrongly, because when she made that point, and seemingly I'm keep looking to see if she's gonna think, but my eyes were fixed on Naya to see whether or not Naya would agree.
No, I disagree totally.
Oh, okay.
You
well,
know, but also, but I respect the lady, because she says, you know, other people practicing other religions and so forth, they have that right. But honestly, Webo, I think she breathed an air of skepticism from what she has said about people who comes here or move around. And that is what I have deduced from all that she has said, to be careful about the practices of people who maybe they refer to as religious practices. Be careful about that. And so it doesn't make me feel too safe, in a sense. You know, I'm really want to know. I really want to know these practices, if it's, you know, they are not godly, but these practices is a reflection of their religion and their customs. So, you know, she have put a bit of skepticism into all this.
Also, what I know and what I find too is that you have a lot of different views and conclusions from different groups of people who use the same book.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Different interpretation.
And that's why I shun away from these religious debates and arguments sometimes, because many times we're all saying the same thing and using different names, really. But I can't stop saying that what the caller have said, you know, she has said a lot of loaded stuff in terms of, because, I mean, we live in an island, and there's a lot of people come here. We're in the Caribbean now, and, you know, the initiative is that people go anywhere they want. And, of course, people are allowed to practice here. Hindus are practicing here, which is good. A lot of noisy churches, you know, in domestic areas, in what we call villages and so forth. And they're allowed to practice. And I respect that. We Rastafarians are not allowed to, you know, according to the proposal. But we'll talk more about that when things become law.
You made a sacrament.
Yeah. And that is bad. That is not acceptable at all. And
to be denied you a sacrament.
Yes, that is not acceptable, because you realize all across the Caribbean, the first thing most of the leaders in them do is to allow the Rastaman them, you know, to practice their religion and their sacrament. This commission they have didn't yield to that, you know. And when I look at it, I feel very bad, because it looks to me like they're saying these people are not worthwhile to even allow to practice what they say they're practicing, and make us feel very insignificant. I can't deal with that part at all. It's a burning shame. But we'll go forward and see what the law dictates anyway. But people must be allowed to practice their religion. Religion is fundamental to a people, you know. However weird it may look sometimes, as long as the callers say, they're doing it within the confines of the law, you know, and morality as well. So it's an interesting time. That's a very interesting call, Webo, and I suppose, and I don't know why olive oil, and I don't know why the drugstore, because that alone in itself.
But I could answer that on behalf of the lady, and I don't know her.
We could get olive oil at the supermarket too.
Well, because I was about to tell you that you don't know why olive oil, and you don't know why the drugstore, and the answer will be, because if she said the supermarket, You might have said, why not the drugstore?
Well, it was quite interesting to hear equating the passing of all people to the Ebola virus. And I would have liked to have asked her.
Spiritual Ebola? I think she said spiritual
Ebola.
Okay. Well, that was an interesting comment in my view as well. And I heard it before. But you see, what happens a lot of the times, I'm not referring to this lady in particular, but a lot of times people make statements, and we as a people make a lot of conclusions without the necessary information, right? Because it happens to me sometimes too. Sometimes it appears something is a certain way, but when you actually do the count, it's not really so. For instance, I remember having discussions here with doctors about the increase in cancer deaths. And when they were here and we went inside the numbers, it was not the kind of alarm that people actually thought it was. Yeah. Sometimes, and you know, I read a lot of dead announcements, and sometimes I can tell you offhand. For instance, for a period of time, most of what we do used to be the end of the year, early in the new year. However, this time, it was not so. You see, so unless you're tracking it, and sometimes it's good to get the hard numbers before you make sweeping conclusions. On the other hand, sometimes it can be correct, but as I said, sometimes it is very important to get the data before you make certain conclusions.
So it's possible that we have not been experiencing more deaths than normal.
It's possible. And I remember we had a discussion here, and I think one person was saying that a particular area had so many, they need to go and investigate that area because something is wrong. What happened was, sometimes, if you spread it over a longer period of time, you may well find it balances. It balances. So there might have been 4 this month. But then when you look at it for the year, it might have been less than it normally is for a year. So we got to be very, very careful sometimes when we're making sweeping conclusions.
Well, one of the things that the lady said, which I was attracted to, was she mentioned that we should pray for our children.
Yeah, we're just about to come to that. Yeah.
And I think that was very important. You know, Webo, my parents, my father's parents' home was just below the park. And I remember as a child, because the bogs was behind us, right down to the sea. And I remember seeing my father, following my father, he didn't see me, on many occasions, going down the bogs and kneeling next to a coconut tree. And he was praying for his children. And you know, none of us have got into real serious trouble, and all of us have done reasonably well. So I think prayer does have an effect, and I agree with her that we should pray more for our children than we are doing at the moment. You know, we should try and get them involved in some sort of religious activity. And you know, unfortunately, religion has very little effect on our young people at the moment. So she said something very, very important. If we could start getting our children involved in religious services and so forth, and pray for them, really.
Yeah, but Ted, I probably want to endorse what you said, but add and point out the quotation which says, though, prayer of faith without works is dead.
Right.
So, lest we think that we will just
pray alone.
Right.
Yeah,
we've got to do some work with it.
Well, of course.
Well, but I certainly want to endorse what Mr. Hobson would have said about the praying for children. I think that was one of my notes from the ladies' comments that I highlighted here on my notepad, because I believe it's very important to try and not only to pray for them, but also to let them see that you are praying that they can begin for them their own self to become a part of, make it a part of their own life, to pray for themselves and to pray for others. So I thought that that was very instructive, and that is something that I would certainly want to encourage our people to do for their children.
Well, I am a fervent and frequent prayer. Maybe sometimes 5, 6, more than that per day. Because I recognized or have experienced the Lord's guidance, the Lord's assistance, the Lord's presence, all the pences in my life. And hence, prayer does work.
Yep.
I've been given more than one chance, and I'm still standing. Praise the Lord. And I would say this to those who want to believe it. The Lord, we know omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, and all the tenses, as the case might be. And the Lord hears, understands, and He applies, comes to our rescue. And I was in church on Sunday, and sure enough, I made a little contribution, and I know it's based on prayer that God sends a little for me to pass on. Praise the Lord. And I would say we are a Christian society, and we must understand how important that is. Luckily, we have not been inculcated like our sister island Haiti with this taboo. I don't believe in Obeah. I just don't believe in it.
So why does Obeah people have this thing with the drugstore? They're always going to the drugstore.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying to you that I read a book, and the book says if you think about these things,
they become a part of you.
Eventually,
consume
your own mind.
Consume. Yeah.
As a result, I have taken that reading very seriously, but it gave me the understanding of what people think is Obeah, because there's some people who are dead set on this thing called Obeah. And I tell you, what all the Obeah you want on me? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Praise the Lord.
That's the last word from Edric W. Stanley, Ted Hobson, Conrad Nye Liburd, the Honorable Spencer Brand. Your phone calls were on 1-869-469-1616-1700. We thank you very much. We thank you. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
And opinions expressed in the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers. With all the power from the